Today on the Field Sales Unscripted podcast, you're going to hear a conversation between myself and Daniel Bryan. He is a veteran that transitioned from a 22-year career in the military into sales and leadership. We talk about how hard the transition was for him, the things that he had to unlearn before he could relearn, and also the skills that his military career taught him that he's able to implement and be successful in his career today. So settle in, get out a notepad, and enjoy this episode. So Daniel, tell me a little bit about your journey from the military into the world of sales.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got out of the military probably about 18, 20 months ago, and found myself looking for like the next adventure. Most military people, when they leave the military, they kind of fall into two realms: project management or human resources, HR. Then I kind of ended up doing that same path. But while I started, my company was like, hey, you're really good with talking to people. You understand what we're looking for. Try sales. Well, that was kind of like my first introduction to sales and the sales alignment, which ultimately has me where I'm at now today as the sales director for a company called EasyStack.
So you talked about it from kind of a professional sense, but share with us a little bit more from a personal sense. How was that transition? Because I think a lot of our veterans, and thank you so much for your service, when they step out of the military, there's kind of that unknown, like, what do I do next? Or how do I move into that next space? So what was that transition like for you personally?
Like most service members, it's scary, right? Because I was in the military for 22 years,
Mm.
and you find yourself kind of gravitating to what is known, what you know, and then
Mhm.
exiting out of that military, entering a whole new workforce, kind of what we call your adult job, right?
Yeah.
Is it's intimidating, right? So finding your path, finding your way, talking to people, reaching out, getting, informational interviews, grabbing in all the resources and mentors, as much as possible kind of helps calm your nerves. But at the same time, that exit is still daunting, right? So trying to land on your feet, especially if you have a family, you got to get a renewed sense of passion and focus, so it can be daunting and exhilarating all at the same time.
What skills that you gained during your time in the service are you able to translate into what you're doing today?
I think the biggest one is resilience and adaptability. And
Mm.
underlining to all of that is obviously the leadership that you learn along the way and all the positions that you've held. But I think service members in a whole kind of become very, very resilient, um, become very, very malleable to the mission set or the environment that's taken place. So as a service member getting out and entering the civilian workforce, we rely heavy on our past experience that builds that resiliency, right? And in sales, you're always going to be told no. You're always going to be saying, "Hey, I can't talk to you right now," or "Hey, I just can't afford it," or "Hey, I can't do, X, Y, and Z," a number of reasons why they can't listen to you or take on your product or solution. And you have to be resilient, right? You have to be able to mold to the environment and adjust on the fly and be okay with the amount of no's that you get that'll ultimately lead you to the yes.
Yeah. And I think that that's so relevant, right? Like that resiliency is absolutely the number one skill that you need to be successful in sales because you get more no's than you get yeses. You get more phones hung up in your face than you get people just welcoming you with open arms. And so
Absolutely.
having a background where that was what you lived, that's what you did for so many years and decades, I really think that it sets you up for success in sales.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. And whether you're, a specialist or a young sergeant or even like myself, a first sergeant or sergeant major getting out of the military, you have, kind of honed in on your ability to flex as needed to accomplish the mission, right? So we learn to do whatever it takes and talk to whoever's, we need to, or be creative, right, on the fly to accomplish a specific task or mission. And it falls hand in hand with sales.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So tell us a little bit more about your current organization, what you do day to day, and share that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So EasyStack is a mobile concept, a mobile integrator of command and control, storage solutions. There's an array of things that we do when it comes to helping the government agencies, and that's kind of where we fall in line, or at least that's where I land, is on the DoD space, the Department of Defense space. We are a government manufacturer or a manufacturer that sells to the government.
Yeah.
And we use prime vendors to get our product into the hands of the end users, or what I call the green suiters. Command and control space, if they need storage capability, if they need comms platforms, communication platforms integrated into our trailers, we do that.
Isn't it so amazing how the position that you're in, the things that you're doing, like your early life and career literally sets you up to be almost like a perfect person to be sitting in this seat?
It is, and I tell people all the time it was a perfect opportunity to bridge the gap that was 22 years of service, subject matter expert on all things tactical and technical when it comes to the military, and then jumping right into now providing solutions to the end user on any capability and mission set, and providing that solution for them. So it was a very good kind of transition for me entering into this role.
That's awesome. So, as you said, you haven't been out of the military that long, and this position is new to you. So, what are some of the challenges that you've experienced in your current position?
I think the biggest one is just needing to listen more, because you don't know
Mm.
what you don't know. And I know having a conversation with somebody in the military is easy, right? Because I lived that life. But having a conversation with senior leaders in a civilian organization is a little
Ooh.
bit different, right? And you have to pay attention, you have to listen more, you have to understand why they're asking that question for us or for me, to be able to kind of accommodate, what they're looking for, and then execute at the level that I'm familiar with, but inside of a civilian organization.
Wow, that's good. I want to stay here for a little bit
Yeah.
because listening is a hard skill overall. But when you're literally like stepping into a very different world, I think that skill of listening is even more important. So, why do you feel like it's that challenging in the civilian world to listen and to have those conversations with those upper executives?
Yeah, so when we get out of the military, and I'm going to speak on behalf of a whole lot of people, we think or feel that we know it all. Right? Like, hey,
Mm,
I'm confident. There's no
wow.
doubt in my mind that I can run this company or do this position better or
Yeah.
sell this solution to this, end user. No doubt in my mind, right? That's just how we're bred. It's how we're groomed in the military. But that presence can come off as aggressive sometimes. So we have to dial it back. And I'll give you an example of something that I learned, many years ago. I went to a school in the military called Ranger School, and I went through probably about 6 to 8 years already in service. And by that time, I had picked up what I thought was good habits, but
Yeah.
were ultimately bad habits. And
Oof.
what Ranger School does is it breaks you back down to the fundamental base of like what is
Mhm.
right doctrinally.
Yeah.
And I had to go in there as a young staff sergeant and forget everything that I knew
Mhm.
and learn from the subject matter experts. And I took that same mentality getting out of the military, saying, hey, I know a lot. I'm sure a lot of it's going to translate, but
Yeah.
when I get into the civilian role, I have to listen to those that have been doing this for years, decades, century, not centuries, but decades.
Yeah.
So,
And that key that you said, that's actually something that I teach a lot when I do sales and leadership training. It's that learning new skills are great. We need to learn new skills, but if we don't unlearn the wrong ways to do things, if we don't unlearn the bad habits, then it doesn't matter how much training that we get, we're never going to be at that place where we can execute because
yeah.
the unlearning the bad is where we have to start.
Yeah, and then I think also being able to influence up, right?
Ooh.
Tactfully, right? So I find myself in the position that I'm in now. I'm learning a whole lot about sales, learning about CRMs, learning about documentation. But then there's also good ideas that I have that I'm like, hey, in the military, we did it this way, and it might serve a positive purpose here. And being able to influence your leadership at the highest level, whether it's a vice president or a CEO, and coming up with ideas to help better the company, having that ability also helps.
Woo, yes, influence and impact. So often I find that leaders focus on their direct reports and they're in the sales space, just their customers. But being able to actually impact your leadership is a key skill that a lot of people don't really use. I had a client last year and I said, so nobody knows what you're doing. You're literally being the best kept secret. And he's like, what are you talking about, Wesley? And I was like, you're doing all the right things, but nobody knows. So we started him sending out a update once a month. He would just send it out to his leaders. And he CC'd me on one that he sent out recently. And the person at the top of the organization, the district vice president, sent it out to all the leaders within the company and said, look, I want you guys to do this. This is great, because the key there is deliver the good news, but also talk about what's not going well, because that's how your leadership understands how they can help you. And they are like, okay, I see that we might have a bad month. So what can we do to mitigate that?
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And I think that, we have to discuss the bad just as much as we discuss the good, right? Because that's how you get better.
Yes.
And I used to tell all my people that I was working with, you have to have a 360-degree sphere of influence, right? Because I have to be able to influence
Yeah.
my subordinates or those that I'm in charge of, my peers, right, left and right of me, and then also, my bosses, right, my superiors that are above me. It takes a talent, well, we'll call it, mental gymnastics, but having that ability and that self-awareness, right, to be able to do that, especially in the sales world, right? Because in my world and in the company that I work with, my peers just aren't the fellow employees that I work with. They're
Yeah.
also external companies,
Ooh.
right? Prime vendors,
Mhm.
being able to influence the prime vendors' sales force, right? Those that are
Mhm.
actually out there knocking on doors for
Yeah.
us, right?
Yeah.
Working as a team. So it takes a lot, right? To be able to self-analyze, self-reflect, and really dig into how to influence them to get a win, not just for yourself, but for your peers, the
Yeah.
other companies you're working with, and then also ultimately yours.
And so how do you balance that the positives and the, I like to call them areas of improvement for growth, not weaknesses, but how do you balance that when you're communicating with, internal or external partners?
That's it's delicate, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to be told that there's a better way or that what they're doing just isn't as efficient, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be delicate in how you approach, right? You
Mhm.
have to understand your audience, know who you're talking to, and then why this moment may be a good or bad moment to bring up improvements.
Yeah.
So I like to prep the objective, whether it be a lead-in email, or hey, I'm going to bring this up in front of the audience next week. What are your thoughts?
Mhm.
Talking to like a vice president or something, right?
Yeah.
So that it can be better received and not
Mhm.
a poke in the eye.
That's good. That's good. I think that it's balancing that communication, right? So making sure that we're getting our point across. We're saying the things we need to say, but we still have to say, can we change this a little bit? Can we tweak this a little bit? And even from the way that I think it's important to communicate, I'm like, let's not load a lot of stuff on at one time. What's the one thing we need to talk about, right? Let's send a very pointed email so we can say the one thing that we need to talk about, the thing that we really need to focus on.
Yeah, and you got to have an endpoint, right? Like a why behind it. Why is this going to make us better? And if I pile on, five, six, seven different things, I'm going to become the complainer, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, my goal isn't to complain. My goal is to improve the organization or how we actually do things. So one thing at a time, keep it pointed and direct, right? Understand your audience and the delivery that you need, right? Because it's not about you being heard, it's about you being understood, right? And if they're not understanding me, then my voice is useless.
Ooh, we're going to have to dig into that one. What is the difference between being heard and being understood?
And I think a lot of parents will resonate with this, is you sit there and you're talk to your blue in your face, and the child is just like, whatever, I'm going to do my own thing, whether they're 5 or 15.
Yeah.
And I take that same concept when dealing with soldiers or dealing with coworkers or even vice presidents is, hey, why am I saying what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? How do I change my language, my tone, my approach so that whoever I'm telling it to can actually understand what I'm saying and why I'm saying it, right? And I find that when doing that, especially with senior C-suite level executives,
Yeah.
comes across a lot clearer, right? A lot better, and it's received more.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I think it's like I say match the energy of the recipient,
you
right?
have to.
If
You
I'm
have
like this bubbly and the person is like completely withdrawn, they're not going to hear anything that I say, right? Like,
That's leadership 101.
yes.
That's leadership. And I'll go back to I've said this a few times as I've made my transitions that sales and leadership is synonymous. They go
Mm,
together, right? Because it's
mm,
the ability to influence someone or a decision.
yeah.
Right? So that's leadership and that's sales. And I think that's why ultimately I gravitated to that,
Mhm.
leaving or exiting the military. So not project management, not HR, did that for 22 years. Now I'm in the realm of influencing others, right, to make a decision.
Yeah. And that is, I think, so important. It's how can we influence, right? Whether they're internal customers or external customers, it's all about getting to the yes. How can I get to the yes? And so
Correct.
often I get a lot of negative, like, oh, but they're going to do this and this and that. I'm like, what if they say yes? Can we think about the positives? So you mentioned sales and leadership are the same, they're similar. So we talked a lot about you as a leader. So let's talk about you as a salesperson, or you as really thinking about being in the sales arm. This arm of the company that you are building out, you're in growth mode, you're really helping it develop. What are some of the things you're doing strategically from a sales side to grow?
Oh man, that's a great question. So I think the biggest thing right now is product identification, right?
Mm.
And name recognition, right?
Ooh.
So in our company, who is EasyStack? What do
Mm.
we represent, right? And
Mm.
then what is it that we want someone like yourself to walk away knowing,
Ooh,
right?
that's good.
We are valuable in nature, whether it's an infrastructure or the DoD space.
Hmm.
We fall very similar in line with the military's pillars of leadership, right? So
Mm.
loyalty, respect, selfless service, honor, things like this, are which we cherish inside of our core values. And all that gets broadcasted to the masses, whether it's United States Marine Corps, U.S. Army, Special Operations Command, just kind of pillars to that we operate in.
Yeah.
So, name recognition and company acknowledgement, I guess.
Okay, okay. So as you have really tapped into this name recognition, it sounds like you're focused on the customer. So as you focus on the customer and getting becoming more recognized in the spaces that you operate in, what are some of the tips or some of the actual actionable items that you guys have used?
In a sense of like actually talking or engaging with the clients.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's easier for me, right? Because I come from that world. So
Mm.
having a two-way conversation and talking shop, helps carry the conversation, right? But
Yeah.
then when you get
Yeah.
down into the product specifics, it goes all the way back to the why and what is the mission, right? So
Mm.
if a unit needs mobile storage that compartmentalizes all of their equipment, I don't know that unless I ask the right questions, right? So what is the mission, right? What are your dilemmas? What are you struggling with, right? And all while they're talking to me, I'm listening and I'm turning the solutions in my head, right?
Yeah.
And saying, all right, I see it. I'm painting the picture. and then I come back with a solution-based product that allows them to accomplish their mission, right? And I do it in a sense of almost like a story or an example, right? You have to be
Yeah.
a wonderful storyteller.
Yeah.
And you sit there and you say, hey, I can get you this trailer at this length with this product inside that stores all of your equipment that helps you solve this problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and you use all of the right language, all the things that I say, all the things that I teach. You're talking about solutions and problems and focusing on what they need, not what you need. And I think that that's really the key. And one of the things that I know helped me as I transitioned from being a chemist into the world of sales is I did the same thing. I literally went to my existing customers in my territory and I'm like, teach me. How are you using this instrument? What are you doing with it? And they would tell me and I would learn their language. So a lot of times people may not come from the industry that they're selling into, but learning the words your customers are using to describe their problems instead of using your internal communications of how our products or our services. Like my team members, they were talking in terms of specs and I'm like, customers don't care about that. They're like, how fast does this run? Oh, it
Yeah.
goes this many milliseconds. They don't care. In about 5 minutes, it's done. Period. Right.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think that speaking the voice of the customer is something that is really important and is a skill that we often miss, especially in the world of field sales.
Yeah, and it's the language barrier, right? So
Yeah.
in civilian and military, there's a large language barrier that a lot of people just don't know about, right? It's
Yeah.
like trying to speak French to a Spanish person. It's going to be very difficult, right? So,
Yes.
what I've helped some of my coworkers with is the Army runs off of acronyms, right? Everything's an acronym, and you just don't know what you don't know as a civilian, right?
Mhm.
So you have to educate yourself. You have to get spun up on how the military mind works, how they speak, and why certain things are important to them.
Yeah.
Once you know that and you have that foundation, you're able to speak that language, you're able to communicate, and you're able to kind of understand their problem set and how you could potentially solve it.
Mm, that's so good. That's so good. Oh, I love it. Speak the language of the customer.
You have
So,
to.
as you think about the organization you're currently in, where do you hope to be in the next 5 years?
5 years, that's a big window, you know. Right now, I was blessed with the opportunity to go from being a just a business development manager in charge of, Army and SOCOM to now a sales director, in a matter of 12 months. And now handling all of Army to include the Corps of Engineers, National Guard,
Yeah.
all of SOCOM from Ranger Regiment all the way up to the Navy SEALs, and then
Yeah.
also now all of the Marines.
Wow.
So I'm hoping that in the next 5 years, we meet the numbers that our executives expect, and we're able to build a team underneath me, that helps me kind of manage that large territory more efficiently.
That's awesome. And so you're in this place now, and you're thinking about like building out the infrastructure of the organization under you. What advice would you give to someone who is a few steps behind you?
Same kind of transition out of the military.
Yep.
Yeah,
Coming out of the military into sales. Yep.
yeah. So hone in on what you've learned in the military, right?
Mm,
Because there are a lot of things that will transcribe from what I've done in the military, what I've learned, my leadership, my tactics, how I execute things, and
yeah.
that'll play right into a sales leadership role, a sales director role, and building a team, talent management, right? So I'm not looking for, my friend that was a sergeant first class with me to join my team. What I'm doing is I'm looking for a dedicated, skilled professional who understands the military market, can speak the language, right? And adapts quickly to change because in this environment, it happens so often. And then also, can hone in on the sales, perspective, leadership styles, and execution, right? So
That's
there's
good.
a
Lean
lot
into.
there, but I think the biggest thing is just have confidence in yourself and the
Yeah.
experience that you have.
Oh, that's so good. Be confident in what you have. And I like to say, what you have is enough, right? Like you don't need to become a better version of yourself or do this or do that or try to fit inside of a box more, right? Like tap into who you are and what you have because it is enough.
It is. It's always enough. And you have to be, so you have to understand that with the knowledge that everybody knows you're still growing. You
Yeah.
know, you're still growing, you're still learning, you're still becoming that expert, right? We have to continue to
Mm.
learn. And as I leave the military and as those that leave the military and into the civilian workforce, you know, rely on your past experience, be
Yeah.
willing to learn, be willing to listen, right? And still execute like you've always done.
Yeah, I think that's so good. So I always like to ask this question as we wrap up the podcast. What is an experience in your life that has impacted the way that you show up and sell or lead today?
Ooh, deep questions, and I love it. So I'm gonna go two things,
Okay.
personal and professional. So personal, you know, I grew up in a small town in the middle of New Mexico, and uh, not unfortunate circumstances, but trying circumstances, right? So
Mhm.
it really tested my resolve in some instances, right? And kind of helped shape me. You know, and then it led me to the military. In the military, I was mentored and groomed by some excellent leaders throughout my entire career. You know, and if I had to look back on one particular instance, I mean, in the military, I really couldn't because it was a cumulative of all the leadership and mentorship that came from the leaders before me that helped kind of build me and who I am, how I think,
Yeah.
right? And the expectation of myself to execute at a high level. And regardless of what I do, whether it's being a parent, a husband, a sales leader, director, or just a mentor to friends and you know, people out there. So
That's good. That's good. That's good. It's those mentors, it's the things that we don't realize that we'll need in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I literally credit a lot of what I know about sales and leadership to the second person I ever worked for in the arena of sales. And literally, she taught me so much. And a lot of the principles that I use today is because of her time and her attention and her patience. So that is a great, great ode to the people who mentored you.
perfect.
Awesome. Well, Daniel, this has been a fantastic conversation. I have enjoyed it thoroughly. If people want to get in contact with you, chat with you, what is the one best way?
They could go email or look me up on LinkedIn. You can find me at daniel.bryan83@gmail.com.
Okay.
And then on LinkedIn, it's easy, just daniel.bryan. You'll see this face and go ahead and click to follow.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, your talent, and your expertise today. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on your show. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was another episode of the Field Sales Unscripted podcast. If you want to get these delivered to your inbox weekly, make sure you subscribe and please leave us a review and share this episode with someone else. Until next time.